I had been with Samantha Moo for 8 years and had proposed to her many times, but she always said she wasn't ready and asked me to wait for her. It wasn't until I found a marriage certificate in her bag that I realized she had been married to her male best friend for 3 years. I felt devastated and confronted her, but she coldly responded, "I've sacrificed so much for you, what more do you want?" I fell silent, and then she slapped me. After being together for 8 years, couldn't she try to understand me a little better? I have been sitting on the sofa for almost 2 hours, tightly gripping our marriage certificate. The bright red certificate features a photo of my girlfriend Samantha, with the male counterpart being the so-called male best friend she mentioned. It turns out that this is what they call a male best friend, someone you can live with and get a certificate with. I forced a bitter smile, but the sorrow in my heart was still hard to hide. "George Koo, what happened?" When Samantha hurried back, I tried my best to calm my emotions. However, seeing the anxiety on her face made me feel a pang of sadness. What was going on? She had already married behind my back, so why was she pretending to be deeply affectionate in front of me? It truly made me uncomfortable. I shook her hand off and calmly threw the marriage certificate in front of her. "Samantha, why didn't you tell me when you and James Wu got your marriage certificate? Didn't you need my blessing?" I wanted to say this with a smile, but I couldn't help but reveal my sadness. Samantha's initial look of concern instantly turned pale as she trembled while taking the marriage certificate from her arms, as if she wanted to explain something. However, when she saw the sarcasm in my eyes, she ultimately chose to remain silent. "Samantha, don't you have anything to say? As long as you explain, I'm willing to listen." Seeing my girlfriend of 8 years unable to respond, the last glimmer of hope in my heart was completely extinguished. "Samantha, as long as you divorce him, I can pretend that nothing has happened. I truly love you, and this love makes me feel incredibly humble. Even now, I'm still wondering if Samantha has her own reasons. George, seeing Samantha with tears in her eyes makes me feel very sad." She reached out her hand as if she wanted to comfort me, but then she let it drop. "George, can you understand how I feel?" In that moment, I thought I had misheard. What is Samantha really saying? Is she asking me to understand her? We've been together for 8 whole years, and now she tells me that I'm the one who has ruined someone else's marriage, while asking me to understand her? Should I understand her infidelity, or should I understand her brazen duplicity? It leaves me feeling truly helpless. I glanced at her with annoyance and angrily slammed the door as I left. I had proposed to Samantha countless times, but she always said she wasn't ready. I had always thought she was just afraid of marriage, but I never expected her to be married already. I couldn't believe it and I didn't want to accept it, especially since Samantha truly loved me when we were together. She accepted my flaws and was willing to live in a rented place with me, sharing instant noodles. After that day, I moved out of the house, thinking that Samantha would find me since she really liked me. However, a whole week went by, and she hadn't sent me a single message. I patiently opened our chat window but eventually couldn't help but text her, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" I edited the message several times but still couldn't bring myself to send it. In the end, I felt a bit disappointed and tossed my phone aside. That night, I was very angry and didn't pay close attention to the authenticity of the marriage certificate. Regardless of whether the documents are real or fake, it was humiliating for me to see Samantha put them in her bag. I truly cannot forgive her, but I still love her and hope that she will explain everything to me. Suddenly, my phone rang, and I felt a rush of joy as I hurried to answer it, only to find it was a spam call. Just as I was about to hang up in disappointment, I noticed that the message I had sent earlier had somehow been delivered. No, something wasn't right, the message had indeed gone out, but I received a bright red notification. Samantha deleted me, and I couldn't believe it. After I sent her a message, the notification was still marked in red. Without thinking much, I called her, but all I heard was, "The line is busy, please try again later." My heart was struck hard once more by this repetitive message, and I felt as if the pain was overwhelming me. Samantha, you really are so resolute. 8 years of love can be set aside with just a word. Clearly, she was the one at fault. Can't I at least ask for an explanation? I set aside my dignity and returned home with my suitcase in tow. After thinking it over, I realized that as long as she could give me a reasonable explanation, I would be able to forgive her. If she were to get a divorce from James, I might even propose to her right away. When I got home, I saw the front door open. James was wearing my pajamas and carrying a bag of trash, walking out with a beaming smile. A woman inside the house was acting coy and wanted to kiss him, and the two of them were being intimate without a care in the world. My heart felt like it was being torn apart, to the point where I couldn't even hold my phone. It fell to the ground, the screen shattered, and the display froze on the message I had sent her, glaringly red. The sweetness between the two of them pierced my heart like a sharp pain. Perhaps I was too obvious in my observation. When they finally pulled apart, there were still a few marks on Samantha's red lips. She glanced at me with a look of dissatisfaction, but her expression changed to one of anxiety as soon as she realized it was me. Her originally rosy cheeks gradually turned pale, and her gaze became shifty. "Samantha, is this the ex-boyfriend you mentioned earlier? What happened? Is this the time to ask for reconciliation?" Samantha was closely embraced by her good friend James, her tone somewhat provocative. "Is this your explanation, Samantha?" Seeing them so intimate made my heart ache even more, and my gaze gradually turned colder. "I've already been very accommodating towards Ching to respect your feelings, can't you just stop bothering me?" Samantha, under James's puzzled gaze, displayed a look of guilt. She was wearing the couple's pajamas I had bought for her and slowly walked over to me, giving me a push with a rather unpleasant tone. Before I could react, she shoved me down the steps, and I tumbled to the ground along with my suitcase, hitting hard and feeling so much pain that I couldn't get up for a moment. James was taken aback as well, but then it seemed he remembered something. A look of disdain crossed his face as he asked Samantha, "Is this the kind of person you don't want to have a wedding with me for? Since you've broken up, why do you still feel guilty?" "Stop talking, let's go back," Samantha said. She gave me a deep look before turning away. I collapsed onto the ground, watching my girlfriend walk into our shared apartment with another man. I never imagined that Samantha would betray me. This was not just betrayal, but also a sudden turn in my life where I found myself as the other person. Samantha and I were high school classmates. Back then, we were both top students. She excelled in the humanities while I was the top in the sciences. We often progressed at the same pace academically, both openly and privately, and I had always been competing with her. At that time, I was solely focused on surpassing her grades and never considered why she was always chasing after me. It wasn't until the eve of the college entrance examination that she unexpectedly invited me to the library. At first, I was a bit wary, thinking she might want to distract me before the exam, and I was quite reluctant. However, realizing that graduation was just around the corner, I ultimately decided to go. The library is open until 8 in the evening, and she asked me to meet at 7:50. I arrived a few minutes early, but I found that she had already been waiting at the door. "Samantha, what do you need to talk to me about?" I asked, frowning at her. The caution in my eyes made her unable to help but smile. "George, which school are you planning to apply to? What do you think?" "I'm not going to tell you. If you tell me your target university, I also want to take the exam for the same one." This is the first time I've seen Samantha show a vulnerable side. She is actually very beautiful, with fair skin and delicate features, and her personality is gentle. Many people have expressed their affection for her all along. However, she always acts very dominant in front of me, which makes me somewhat irritated. What I feel more is the pressure of being pursued, as if she is ready to ditch me at any moment and take the lead. I looked at Samantha, who had a bright sparkle in her eyes, and for the first time, I began to agree with the compliments the boys in class had for her. My heart suddenly started to race uncontrollably. Then I thought it might be her trick. Recalling the words I had just blurted out, I couldn't help but want to slap myself. My first choice is also Kyoto University. As I turned to leave, I heard a voice behind me. "Who cares what school you choose? I responded a bit angrily, but I couldn't help but smile slightly. On the day the admission results were announced, Samantha confessed her feelings to me. I originally wanted to reject her with a sense of pride, but my heart betrayed me. "George, your heart is beating so fast," she said, her mischievous eyes making my cheeks flush. "Ever since that summer after high school graduation, we've been together, and it's been that way ever since. I always believed we would get married, until that day when I accidentally saw her marriage certificate. How ridiculous it is that I was still making excuses for her. Thinking about it now truly breaks my heart." I sat on the ground for a long time until a security guard from the community passed by and saw me. He came over to help me up and asked, "Mr. Koo, what's wrong? Are you having problems with your girlfriend?" Samantha and I had lived in this community for several years, so the guard was quite familiar with us. "I've broken up with her, sir, and I don't intend to stay in this place anymore. Thank you for your care over the years. I hope we have a chance to meet again in the future." I forced a smile, although my tone was a bit unnatural. "Hey, Mr. Koo, you've been with your girlfriend for so many years. How did you end up breaking up? What a pity. It's normal for a girl to have a bit of a temper. You could try communicating again. Don't let such a great opportunity slip away," the security guard patiently advised. "I also wish I could make her happy, but she's been married to someone else for 3 years behind my back, uncle. Do you know that?" I unconsciously became the male supporting character for 3 years. Holding back my heartache, I picked up the phone and suitcase from the ground and glanced towards the door, feeling a twinge of resentment in my heart. "Ah! How could this happen? I saw you being so close with your girlfriend and thought you had something else going on." The security guard patted me on the shoulder. I limped away from the community with my broken phone and took a taxi home. When I opened the door, I found my parents at home. "George, why didn't you let us know you were coming back? Where is Samantha? She didn't come back with you?" Mom heard the voice and walked out of the kitchen, still wearing her apron. I suddenly remembered that today is Saturday, both my parents are teachers, so they have the day off. Is she busy and couldn't make it back? "Mom, what are you cooking? It smells so good." I paused for a moment, feeling awkward, and changed the subject. I still hadn't figured out how to tell my parents about Samantha. They had always thought that she and I were going to get married. "Why is your hand bleeding?" "It's nothing, I just fell earlier. I'm going to change my clothes first." I actually shouldn't have come home, even though I really didn't want to stay in a hotel any longer. Just as I was trying to figure out how to tell my parents, the doorbell rang. "Is it Samantha?" "Auntie was just asking George why he didn't bring you home with him. He said you had something going on. Did you two have a fight? If that guy is bothering you, just let Auntie know, and I'll stand up for you." When I heard my mom's surprised voice, I was still changing my clothes in the room. Upon hearing her voice, my expression suddenly changed, and I hurriedly opened the door. What was Samantha doing here? "Hey, you better not bully Samantha, or I'll have no mercy." My mom's voice rang out from outside the door. I brought Samantha into the room and, as I closed the door, I couldn't hold back my anger. "What do you want?" I asked her in a low voice, my eyes red. I pushed her onto the floor. Samantha fell down, her eyes instantly welling up with tears, displaying a pitiful expression. Seeing her like this, I felt a moment of softness in my heart and was about to reach out to help her, but the image of her kissing James flashed before my mind. I suddenly came to my senses and tightly squeezed my own palm. The pain brought me back to reality. Samantha has already married her close friend, while I had foolishly been proposing to her all these years, thinking that she was refusing me out of fear of marriage. As I was still in a daze, Samantha appeared beside me out of nowhere, trying to hug me. "Samantha, what on earth do you want? You're already married, could you please stop making me feel uncomfortable?" When her hand touched mine, I instantly felt a wave of disgust and forcibly swung her hand away, shouting loudly. Just then, a loud noise came from outside, and I realized that my parents might have heard it, but I decided to ignore it. Samantha, you have really disappointed me. You've been married to James for 3 years, and for these 3 years, you've kept saying he was just your friend, and I believed you. Even though you spend half of your time with him each month, I chose to understand. I have always believed that we would get married, and I firmly believe that you love me. But is this how you respond to my trust? If you want to marry him, then just break up with me. Why won't you say it? You really disappoint me. Please leave immediately and don't show up in front of me again. Otherwise, I might really lose my control. George, do you really not love me anymore? Do you have any feelings for me at all? Tears welled up in Samantha's eyes, as if she couldn't believe that I no longer loved her. You are really interesting. I love you, so what? Have you divorced him? I asked with a cold smile. George, can we go back to how it used to be? There was a hint of naive stubbornness in her eyes. I really doubt whether I heard her correctly. How could she say something like that? Is she really a college graduate? Do you even know what you're saying? I looked at her in disbelief, my tone full of shock. But we've always gotten along well before, how could you say something like this? Do you really want me to stay in this position forever? When Samantha left crying, I slammed my fist heavily onto the bed, feeling my reluctance and pain replaced by anger. I never expected that my girlfriend of 8 years would turn out like this. The image of the once radiant girl gradually faded, replaced by Samantha's hypocritical and greedy face. Luckily, I discovered the truth in time. Otherwise, I might have continued to be her secret lover without even realizing it. George, Mom, you heard it too. Samantha secretly married her male best friend 3 years ago, and there's no future for us anymore. I quit my job. I had chosen a small company next to Samantha's just to be close to her, earning less than $100,000 a year, but I felt satisfied being by her side. Honestly, I never really liked this job. During the interview, my boss even asked me if this small position was too low for someone like me who graduated from Peking University. Looking back, I realize I was too naive. For Samantha, I gave up my own career. When I submitted my resignation, it was approved in less than half an hour. After all, my position is not a technical one, and I excel in my job. I often take the initiative to help the maintenance department solve problems, which has made my supervisor somewhat dissatisfied with me for a while. A month later, after completing the handover process for my resignation, I walked out of the office building with ease and noticed a striking red Maserati parked below. I glanced at it without giving it much thought and continued toward the parking lot. Hey, George, can we talk? As I took a few steps, the red car rolled back a bit and stopped in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing a handsome face. I'm sorry, I don't know you. I shook my head and continued walking. The man insisted, I'm the owner of Yaojing Real Estate. Don't you really want to chat? He followed me, and the car slowly moved alongside us, while he handed me a business card. Yaojing Real Estate is the only company in the city that is ranked among the global top 100 enterprises. I saw the name on the business card, Michael Chen, Executive President of Yaojing Realty. I didn't feel like I was anything special to warrant a real estate president coming to find me personally. It's just that I need your skills. Last year, when you breached my system at your small company, I started to take notice of you. I recall that it wasn't a successful attempt at the time. In fact, I had succeeded at that time, I just happened to be there to help fix things. So, I paused to carefully observe the man in front of me. He looked to be in his early 20s, with dyed red hair and a flamboyant personality, giving off more of a vibe of a rock musician or a rapper than a corporate president. I seamlessly integrated into the new company, taking on a technical position that was easy but required some brainpower. Currently, my monthly salary is 7 times what it was before. They even arranged for my dormitory to be located near the company. I deleted all contact information for Samantha and focused on working and studying, striving to make up for the shortcomings of the past few years. I thought I would have no further contact with Samantha until that day when I arrived at the company and noticed my colleagues were looking at me oddly. I was a bit confused, and less than half an hour after I sat at my desk, I was called into the office by Michael. "George, I didn't expect this from you. Are you still being a third party for someone else? Do all geniuses have their unique preferences? If I told you that I had no idea my girlfriend of 8 years was secretly getting married to someone else behind my back, would you believe me?" It turns out that yesterday, all the employees at the company received an email with the subject line about George from the tech department over the years. The way everyone looked at me made it clear they understood. It was probably James. He seems to have found out about Samantha and me, and it looks like he's also being led around in circles by a woman. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Can you solve this problem within a week? Just let me know if you need anything. Although I'm a bit helpless about your romantic mindset, who can blame you for not wanting to give up your skills? Michael patted my shoulder and said this in a half-joking manner. I felt warm inside. Even though I had only known Michael for a short time, he had shown me unconditional trust. In truth, I didn't have strong feelings for James, considering he was also a victim, deceived by Samantha just like I was. However, his behavior today has made me start to doubt whether he has known about my relationship with Samantha all along, and presenting the marriage certificate might be his way of getting back at me. After all, Samantha kept it hidden for so long. How could she suddenly be bold enough to carry the marriage certificate in her bag and even forget to take it with her? I retrieved our chat history and the videos my friends recorded during each proposal, along with the 35 photos we took together. Just as I was planning to hire a detective to investigate Samantha and James, I received an email in my inbox. Upon opening it, I saw it was from Michael, with the subject line "Free Offer." I had some suspicions in my mind, and when I clicked in, it turned out to be exactly the information I wanted the detective to investigate. I sent him an email mentioning a defense system information project I worked on during college. At that time, a company offered to buy it for a high price, but I didn't sell. This time, I wanted to voluntarily give it to him. Just as I sent the email, my phone started ringing. "Is that Panda System your work?" "Yes, just hold on for a moment. I'm going to handle that person. You can focus on helping me improve this system." I hadn't had the chance to respond before the call was abruptly ended. I began to doubt his reliability. 3 days later, while I was testing the new system, I received a message from an unknown number. "Can you meet me one more time?" Before I could even think, the message was automatically deleted by my phone system as it identified it as spam in under 10 seconds. However, I knew that this text message was likely sent by Samantha. I hadn't intended to go, but I suddenly became curious about her purpose for reaching out. So, I took the initiative to call her. I asked for the address and time. "George, if I don't say anything, I'll hang up." "Stop. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., in front of the Ishan Art Museum." Samantha's tone sounded very tired. I guessed it might be because of Michael. The next morning at 10 a.m., I arrived punctually at the entrance of the Ishan Art Museum. Just as I was about to leave, I suddenly felt someone tugging at the corner of my clothes. I turned around and saw that it was Samantha. She was holding 2 cups of coffee, the iced Americanos we used to drink when we went out together. "Sorry, I went to get coffee for you, less ice and 3 shots of espresso," she said with a smile as she handed me the coffee, her tone warm and friendly. I took a step back and couldn't help but laugh when I saw her puzzled expression. "Samantha, you might not have noticed, but the one who always loves iced Americanos is actually you. I've never liked bitter coffee, I just drink it with you because you do." As soon as I finished saying that, I saw the coffee in Samantha's hand drop to the floor. Her face turned a bit pale, and she managed to force a smile as she asked me what I liked to drink. I thought to myself, there's no need to waste time, let's just get straight to the point. "I've been quite busy lately." I impatiently interrupted her, feeling a bit regretful about meeting her. Really, I was just asking for trouble. "George, I've divorced James. You mentioned before that once I get divorced, you would act as if nothing had happened." Samantha walked up to me and asked with concern, "Are you okay? If you're feeling unwell, you should go to the hospital for a checkup. By the way, are you still working at that company? If that's the case, I truly feel sorry for the company's boss for hiring such an inadequate employee." "Sure. By the way, I won't meet you again next time. I was really foolish to come to see you." Under my cold and harsh words, Samantha's eyes started to turn red. She tried to reach out and grab my clothes, but I avoided her. Thankfully, we have already cut off contact, otherwise, it might have an impact on me. In fact, I might already be affected, otherwise how could I have been confused enough to say that I could forgive her as long as she gets a divorce? That's not the kind of thought a normal person would have. Looking back now, I really want to teach my past self a lesson. I never thought Samantha would divorce James. I always believed she loved him, otherwise, why would she secretly get a marriage certificate with him? It wasn't until Michael sent me a message that I realized the truth. It had only been a week since my relationship with James started, and already all the information about his family had been uncovered. That's when I came to understand that James was actually a rich second-generation heir. His father is the owner of Ewan Real Estate, which is in direct opposition to Michael's family, and he often engages in some underhanded tactics. "George, do you think this is enough to make Ewan suffer a bit?" Michael excitedly sent me a voice message. "Didn't you say you were doing this to help me?" "Oh, it's fine. If Ewan falls, James won't be able to recover either." I opened it up and found a timeline of James and Samantha together, along with a section that detailed the timeline of Samantha and me. What a surprise! But what does this have to do with Ewan? After all, James is the only son of the boss. I flipped through a few more pages and, wow, I never realized how impressive James really is. I put a lot of effort into my relationship with Samantha, even resorting to some questionable actions using her father's company. I couldn't help but wonder why Samantha couldn't let go of me, especially since she was planning to get a marriage certificate with James. It seems she really invested a lot of feelings. People are always curious about others' affairs. Less than a day later, it unexpectedly trended on social media. Samantha's experience has sparked widespread discussion. After 8 years of love, she has earned the notorious label of a mistress for 3 years. In a matriarchal world, she achieved her goals. Trending terms related to her situation keep appearing on Weibo. Although I knew this issue would attract attention, I didn't expect it to become so sensational. In just 2 days, the number of views on related topics exceeded 100 million. Eager internet users quickly uncovered Samantha's personal information, forcing her to shut down all her social media accounts. Regarding James, 3 days after the news went viral, I was at home scrolling through my phone when I came across a report. James, the only son of a certain real estate company, was suspected of being involved in economic crimes and had been arrested. In the video, although he was wearing a silver bracelet, there was a hint of arrogance on his face. It was then that I realized he had already been taken into custody. Judging by his expression, he seemed to believe that, as the only child, his father would surely come to his rescue. Unfortunately for him, his father would also be going in with him a few days later. As a participant in the event, I started to attract everyone's attention. Until a keen-eyed netizen noticed that I had never appeared in public, it was always the secretary from Yaojing Real Estate handling my matters. Why would an ordinary employee earn the boss's trust? The netizen found my Panda system that I developed during college through some clues. Is this Panda system the same one as before? It's really surprising. How could such an impressive person be in love too? Big shot. Have you forgotten about Samantha? Take a look at me. Come on, don't be so stubborn about gender. In fact, I can also act a little shy. The netizens began to discuss me enthusiastically, and the entries related to Samantha were quickly pushed down. The big shot is also someone who thinks about love a lot. A common trait between me and the big shot is that we are both romantic at heart. Samantha, let's all live together. Netizens are full of creativity, with all sorts of memes emerging one after another. By the time I realized what was happening, I had already become a big shot caught up in love. Initially, the private messages were expressions of sympathy, but they later turned into all kinds of confessions from both men and women. I didn't respond, I didn't want to make things awkward. But James insisted on stirring things up, so I can't be blamed for that. I never expected that amidst all this commotion, Samantha would dare to show up. That day, I worked overtime until 2 a.m. to handle some data. Just as I got home and was about to unlock the door, I was suddenly grabbed by the cuff of my pants. At that moment, I had already figured out how to respond, but I found that the person was only holding onto my pants and didn't take any further action. I felt a bit suspicious, but it was too dark, and the streetlight by my doorstep was broken, so I couldn't see clearly. "Samantha? It's me." Hearing the familiar response, my heart finally settled down. I walked into the house, turned on the lights, and invited the other person in. Samantha walked with a bit of awkwardness, looking somewhat limping. "I came to deliver something to you," her tone was soft. She placed a document on my coffee table. As I picked it up and looked through it, I was surprised to find evidence of tax evasion related to Yuan Real Estate, along with information about the fund's whereabouts. I looked up at her for a moment. Samantha had lost a lot of weight and appeared very exhausted. There were even noticeable bruises hidden under her bangs at her temples. "What happened to you?" I glanced at her in surprise. "Don't look at me. I look really ugly right now." She seemed to realize it and suddenly raised her hand to cover her face. Her coat looked a bit loose, almost as if it couldn't stay on properly. "I'm not here to seek a truce, I just want to know what you're doing. I understand that my greed has brought us to this situation, but it's too late to say anything now. I'm sorry, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I sincerely apologize to you." After Samantha finished speaking, she gave me a deep glance and then turned to walk toward the door. That look was so complex that I didn't know how to describe it. I stared blankly at her as she walked away, wanting to ask her why things had turned out this way, but the words just wouldn't come out. I handed the evidence that Samantha had given me over to Michael, and he headed straight to the tax office without hesitation, well prepared with the materials. Yuan Real Estate is currently under investigation. James is still in jail, waiting for his father to rescue him, unaware that he will soon encounter his father inside. Yuan Real Estate has been required to pay a tax bill of $50 million due to large-scale tax evasion, along with $4 million in late fees and a $10 million penalty. Due to all its liquidity being used to pay fines, the company was forced to sell off some of its properties to barely meet the penalty payment. However, without liquid assets, the company struggled to maintain its operations, and its future looked bleak. A month later, Yuan Group filed for bankruptcy protection. A month and a half later, Yuan Real Estate officially announced its bankruptcy, and the chairman chose to end his life. Meanwhile, his only son was awaiting sentencing in prison for financial crimes. Although I don't have much understanding of company management, I know that before its bankruptcy, Yuan was indeed a standout among listed companies. In less than 2 months, it completely vanished. Although I contributed in some way, it still feels surreal to me. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about Yuan Real Estate. Sigh. There's nothing to think about, don't overthink it. I'll take you to do something fun. Michael still loves to have a good time. I smiled and shook my head as I followed him. He took me directly to a really nice-looking bar. I have to work tomorrow. No, no way. I replied with a look of rejection. The alcohol made me feel numb, and I really didn't enjoy it, especially since I still needed to think for my work. If there was a mistake in the data, it could ruin a month's worth of effort, so I really couldn't drink this. That's fine, I can give you a break. I said, then I'd like to take half a month off. Sure. The lights in the bar were dim as I was led to a private room. Look. I specially saved this bottle of 1982 Lafite for you. I can't bear to drink it myself. Come, have a taste. I saw the eyes of Michael and took a sip. The unexpected flavor was quite good. I gulped it down in one go. Huh? Do you know how to taste wine? You're really gulping it down. I spent a lot of money on this bottle of wine, but didn't you say you don't drink? Although it's red wine, it packs quite a punch. I couldn't quite catch what Michael was saying afterward because I had taken another drink while he was talking, and my head was already feeling a bit foggy. When I woke up the next day, I realized I was lying in the hotel room, dressed in the hotel's pajamas. Just then, a gentle female voice sounded in my ear, and I realized that there was a woman lying next to me, wearing the same pajamas. Excuse me, please open the door. Coming. While I was still in a daze, the woman had already gotten out of bed with a smile and opened the door. Oh no! Samantha shouted, "You, go away!" I quickly jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. I saw Samantha holding a knife, about to stab the woman. Strangely, the woman could have dodged but still got stabbed. I hurried over to stop it, and Samantha's eyes were red, as if she were on the verge of losing control, struggling intensely. Soon, the hotel security arrived and took control of her. I was sweating all over, staring blankly at the pale face of the woman on the floor and the pool of blood around her. Shortly after, I was taken to the police station. As soon as I arrived, Michael also showed up. He anxiously asked me what had happened. I briefly explained the situation I had observed to him. He sighed and said, "What are we going to do about this? I told you this wouldn't work long ago. The woman who was with you in the morning is my cousin. She has always said that she likes you and asked me to help her come up with some ideas. I had mentioned this to you before, but you rejected it outright, so I thought of this plan." As a result, there was almost an incident. When I finished giving my statement and came out, Michael was waiting for me at the entrance in his Maserati. "Was this arranged by you?" I sat in the passenger seat, feeling a bit uneasy. I had mentioned before that this wasn't acceptable. My cousin isn't your cousin, right? I saw her intentionally letting Samantha in. Since you already know, I won't hide it anymore. Samantha has to go in, otherwise, she might keep bothering you. Michael's previously smiling expression changed, and his tone suddenly turned somber. "This is my personal matter." I sat up straight, staring at him. Michael slowed down and stopped by the roadside. He got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and leaned against the car without saying a word. I felt very suffocated inside the car. "George, you are too kind. If you can't make a decision, I can help you. If you disagree with my approach, feel free to let me know at any time." Samantha was sentenced to 7 years for intentional injury, but her family insisted on having her undergo a mental evaluation. The results showed that she had schizophrenia. Samantha was transferred from the police station to a mental hospital. I initially thought that her family had given her a false diagnosis, but it turned out she was truly ill. A month later, I went to the hospital to see her. She looked even thinner, and the hospital gown hung loosely on her. I couldn't understand why she suddenly developed schizophrenia. She seemed fine before. She was sitting on the hospital bed with her back to me, gazing out the window. The afternoon sunlight fell on her, making her seem to glow. "Samantha," I called softly. She slowly turned her head, her eyes vacant, as if she didn't see me. I approached her and realized she was still staring in the direction of the door, wanting to reach out and test the waters. Just then, she suddenly looked at my hand in terror, started to tremble, and shouted for me not to hit her. Before I could react, several doctors and nurses rushed in and pushed me out. I saw them restraining her to the bed and administering 2 shots of sedative, which finally helped her calm down a bit. "How did she end up like this?" "Excuse me, doctor, may I ask about her condition?" "She's such a pitiful girl, suffering from abuse at the hands of her husband and enduring long-term psychological pressure." I watched the doctor leave and then looked at the bed, where Samantha was frowning in her sleep, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of sadness. Suddenly, I remembered the scene of my first proposal to Samantha. At that time, when she saw me take out the ring, she was so moved that tears welled up in her eyes, yet she still rejected me. It was during my junior year that I first noticed George, who was a freshman at the time. I didn't pay much attention to him at first, but he was just too noticeable. I had never seen a freshman make such a splash. He entered school with top scores in the science category and was dating the top student in the arts from a nearby 211 university, which really caused quite a stir. At that time, I was wondering what kind of future such a person would have after graduation. Unfortunately, I was disappointed to find that he chose a very ordinary job after graduation to pursue that humanities top student. Sigh, it truly was a rather unambitious choice. I stopped paying attention to him. Then, one day, while I was admiring the system I had created, it was suddenly compromised. This is the security system that I spent over a year developing. I was busy patching it up, and fortunately, I was able to successfully fix it in the end. However, I became intrigued by that person. I had my assistant investigate, and it turned out he was just an ordinary employee at the same company, not from the tech department. This was interesting, as it made it easier for me to recruit him. I didn't expect that he would resign before I even had the chance to offer him a job. This is a great opportunity, and I have to make the most of it. So I drove my brightest Maserati and waited for him at the entrance of his office building. I confirmed with his assistant that he would be handling his resignation today. Sure enough, I spotted him waiting at the door. The confident person I had seen before now looked very lonely. I was taken aback for a moment and hurriedly drove to follow him. However, he was very cautious, so I had to clarify my identity. After some effort, I finally managed to invite him over, only to find out that his previous job's monthly salary was just 5,000 yuan. 5,000 yuan? Even the receptionist at my company earns 8,000. You graduated from Peking University, and he was only offered 5,000? When it came to discussing the salary, I initially offered him 35,000. I thought that 35,000 a month for a technical position was still somewhat low. However, I worried that he might think I was trying to scam him, so I quoted that amount first. Just a few days after he started, I received an email about him. I felt a rush of anxiety. This was not good. If he got poached, it would be quite a problem. I saw him collecting information, so I immediately contacted my roommate, who is now running a detective agency. I was really surprised when my roommate sent me the information. I never expected this. Back then, everything was so passionate, and now, after graduation, it has turned out like this. I forwarded the information to him and specifically mentioned that I didn't need any money in return. He will definitely be touched. It would be best if someone who can be moved stays by my side to work hard together with me, hehe. Not long after, I received his reply email. I thought it would just be a simple thank you, so I was about to take a quick glance and then close it. To my surprise, what I saw was a complete system design concept and the final results. What a surprise! This system is the same problematic Panda system from back then, right? It caused my computer to be hacked for a whole day and night. I can't believe it was developed by him. I'm really lucky. I really have an eye for talent, as I managed to find such a talented individual. So, I immediately called him and told him to focus on this system while I would take care of everything else. I hope my company can become the safest. I actually considered involving Samantha as well, but George is too kind-hearted. I had no choice but to set a trap, thinking he wouldn't notice. After all, how could someone who is capable of designing software like Panda be so dull? He asked me in the car, his tone very serious, which annoyed me a bit. So I decided to lighten my attitude. George, you're being too indecisive. If you can't make a decision, I can help you. If you disagree with my approach, feel free to point it out at any time. Since you don't want to take action, I can only consider myself a sword in your hands. After all, I really need him to help me make money.